The wagon lurched to a stop, so suddenly the bride nearly fell from the seat. Her fingers dug into the reins, knuckles bone-white beneath the glare of the afternoon sun. "I'm scared. It's my first time," she whispered, breath trembling as heat shimmered off the road. Elias Crow swung down from his saddle beside her, boots thumping against the packed dust. He lifted his hat slightly, trying to soften the hard lines of his face. "Ain't nothing to fear," he murmured, voice low, steady, almost tender. "You're safe now." But the bride's gaze darted everywhere, to the warped posts of the saloon porch, to the still windows of the trading post, to the empty stretch of desert where heat rose in wavering sheets. Something in the air made the hairs on her arms stand up. A hush settled across the main road of Ridgetop Crossing, too sudden to be natural. On the opposite side of the street, Abigail Reeves stood with a small sack of flour cradled in her arms. Plain dress, dust on her boots, face calm as a still pond. Folks tended to overlook her, which was why no one saw the way her eyes lifted, sharp as a hawk's, toward the canyon rim. Her grip on the sack tightened ever so slightly. Elias didn't notice. He offered the bride his hand. She didn't take it. Her breath came quicker, chest rising and falling as a stray gust scattered grit across her skirt. A single creak echoed, the saloon door shifting on its hinges, though not a soul pushed it. Elias's brows furrowed. Wind's acting strange today. Abigail's gaze stayed fixed on the distant ridge where shapes flickered, no more than shadows pressed against sandstone, but wrong enough to knot the gut. The bride felt the shift before she saw anything. The sun seemed to dim for a heartbeat. A distant metallic clatter carried on the wind. Her voice broke. "Elias, someone's watching us." He turned, scanning the horizon. Nothing but rock, dust, and merciless light. "Just nerves," he said gently, yet his hand drifted toward the pistol at his hip. A dry tumbleweed rolled across the road, bouncing once before collapsing in a tangle near Abigail's boots. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes narrowed the slightest fraction, catching the reflection of something, a glint of steel far up in the canyon. The bride swallowed hard. "I don't like it." Elias gave her a slow nod, finally sensing the tension wound tight in the air. "Let's get you inside. Folks will be waiting." But the townsfolk weren't waiting. They were watching, from behind curtains, from shadowed doorways, their faces pale, breaths held, as though they felt the same invisible pressure closing in. The wind died suddenly. No sound, no birds, no insects, only heat. Abigail stepped forward, eyes never leaving the canyon rim. Whatever she saw up there made her whisper, barely audible, "It's starting." And the street fell into a silence that felt like the desert holding its breath. Gunfire cracked before the echo had time to scatter. The first bullet punched into the water trough beside the bride, sending a geyser of splinters and muddy spray into the air. She screamed, stumbling backward as Elias yanked her behind the wagon. More shots followed, sharp, rolling, merciless, bouncing off walls, ripping through dust. Horses thundered down from the canyon like a storm loosed from stone. The Vulture Brothers, their silhouettes cut through the sunlight, dark shapes riding hard, rifles lifted, dust boiling in their wake. The lead rider raised his pistol and fired again, the round slamming into the wagon wheel inches from Elias's head. "Down!" Elias shouted, dragging the bride to the ground as another hail of bullets screamed over them. Windows shattered along the main road. Buckets tipped. Chairs fell. A dog darted beneath a porch, tail between its legs. Abigail Reeves moved before the dust even reached her. Flour sack tucked under one arm, she walked with clean purpose through the chaos. Not running, not crouching, simply stepping where bullets weren't. Her eyes mapped the angles of ricochets, the positions of shooters, the way shadows shifted as riders fanned out. Inside, she ordered the bystanders frozen in doorways. A man hesitated, trembling. Abigail grabbed his shoulder and guided him behind a post, just as a bullet chewed a groove into the wood where his head had been. The riders tore into town, hooves hammering deep dents into the hard earth. One swung his rifle toward Elias. "You got the map, Crow?" he barked over the roar of hooves. "Hand it over, or we take the girl." The bride's breath came in ragged bursts. Her fingers clutched Elias's sleeve, knuckles trembling. Elias raised his revolver, but didn't shoot. The gang was too close to her, too many angles, too fast. Another rider leaned from his saddle and reached for the bride. Abigail appeared between them, silent as shadow. The raider froze mid-grab, startled by her sudden presence. She didn't touch her gun. She didn't move an inch. She simply lifted her chin, staring through him with a steadiness that chilled the air. "Back off!" Elias snarled from behind her, finally steadying his aim. The raider's eyes flicked between them, the armed cowboy and the unarmed widow who somehow made him flinch. He jerked the reins instead of grabbing the bride. The Vulture Brothers regrouped, circling like wolves, rifles glinting. Dust swirled around their horses' legs as more of them spilled down the canyon path, shadows thickening, swallowing light. The bride pressed a hand to her mouth. Elias tightened his hold on her. Abigail stepped slightly ahead of them both, gaze sweeping the ridge, counting riders, reading the lines of danger as if seeing something others couldn't. The gang leader raised his weapon high. "Last chance, Crow. The map, or everyone in this town pays." A dry wind swept through, carrying only the scent of gunpowder and fear. Abigail whispered, almost to herself, "They're not done." The riders tightened formation, and the canyon shadows kept coming. The cellar door slammed shut as another gunshot echoed above, dust sifting down from the beams like falling ash. The townsfolk huddled together in the dim lantern glow, wide eyes, trembling breaths, the weight of fear pressing the air thin. The bride clung to Elias's arm, tears streaking the dust on her cheeks. "They'll take him," she whispered, voice cracking. "They'll take everything." Elias tried to steady her, but his own hands weren't steady anymore. Another blast landed close, close enough to rattle the lantern hook. Abigail Reeves stood apart from them, back straight, face turned upward toward the muffled chaos above. Her expression didn't waver. It never had, but the room felt her silence, heavy as iron. The bride tore her gaze from the door and looked at Abigail. "How are you not scared?" she asked, voice barely more than breath. "How can you just stand there?" Abigail didn't answer at first. She watched dust fall from the cellar rafters like drifting memories. Her jaw tightened, not in fear, but in decision. "They're going to break through," Elias muttered. "We need a plan. We need—" Abigail's voice cut through the panic, calm as still water. "You need to breathe." The words stopped the room. A distant shout echoed outside. A horse screamed. Metal clanged. The bride flinched, burying her face in her hands. Abigail stepped closer, kneeling so she met the bride's shaking eyes. "You said you're afraid of losing him," she said softly. "That fear is honest. It's human." She brushed a stray tear from the bride's cheek. "But fear can't be the only voice you listen to." The bride swallowed. "How do you know that?" Abigail paused. A long moment. Then she exhaled, slow and controlled, as if lowering a weight she'd carried for too many miles. "Because I've lost someone," she said quietly. The room stilled. She rose, stepping into the lantern light. For the first time, the townsfolk really looked at her. The straight posture, the disciplined hands, the watchful eyes that never stopped measuring danger. "My name wasn't always Reeves," she said. Elias lifted his head, confused. "Then what?" A boom shook the cellar door. Dust rained down. Someone screamed. Abigail didn't flinch. "Years ago," she continued, "I hunted men across these territories. The worst of them. Through deserts, mountains, canyons." Her gaze drifted to the dirt floor, remembering tracks long since erased by time. "I was faster than their bullets, quieter than their knives." The bride's breath caught. Who were you?" Abigail lifted her face, and her eyes, steady, sharp, alive with something old, met every gaze in the room. "Abigail Ash Reeves," she said. "They call me Ash." Silence thickened, reverent, unreal. The bride's voice trembled. "But Ash died." They said. They were wrong. Another strike pounded the cellar door. The hinges groaned. The lantern swayed. Abigail reached into a crate and pulled out an old revolver. Its steel worn, its grip smooth from years in a hand that once refused to miss. Dust clung to it like memory. She brushed it clean with her thumb. "The desert remembers everything," she murmured. Then she holstered the gun, turned toward the stairs, and said, "Open the door. They want a legend. I'll give them one." The cellar door burst open on Abigail's command, and she stepped into the moonlit street as gunfire shredded the silence behind her. Dust curled around her boots. Shadows shifted along the rooftops. The Vulture Brothers waited, rifles glinting, horses pawing at the dirt, eyes hungry for blood. She walked into the open like she owned every grain of sand beneath her feet. "ASH Reeves," the gang leader roared. "Didn't know we'd find a ghost tonight." Abigail didn't answer. Her hand hovered near her revolver, fingers loose, breath slow. The night wind tugged at her hair. Behind her, frightened faces peered from doorways, the bride clutching Elias's arm, trembling as if she were watching a myth step out of old campfire stories. The leader spat into the dust. "Give us the map, or this whole town burns." Abigail lifted her chin. "Come take it." A hush throttled the street. Then the first rider charged. Abigail's gun cleared leather faster than the moonlight could catch it. A single shot cracked the night. The rider toppled from his saddle before his horse even realized he died. Another rushed her left flank. She pivoted, boots grinding into grit, firing once, twice, both shots hitting before the muzzle smoke could drift. Shouts rose. Panic. Anger. Horses reared, thrashing. The Vulture Brothers scattered into firing lines. Abigail moved like she had rehearsed this battle with the desert itself. She slipped behind a trough, letting the ricochet of their bullets reveal their positions. She stepped into the open again, using the angle of the moon to blind one rider long enough to drop him cleanly. The crowd watched, breathless. Elias whispered, She's not even trying. This is just memory to her." The leader snarled and fired wildly. Abigail advanced through the gunfire without hesitating, reading each flash of muzzle light, each shift of shadow. Her steps were measured. Her shots were final. Bodies hit dust one by one until only the leader remained. His boot pressed to the bride's back, his pistol jammed hard against her temple. The bride shook, breath ragged, gown torn. "Drop it, Ash," he bellowed. "Drop it, or she dies." Abigail stilled. Her gun hung at her side. Her eyes lowered, shoulders slackening as if in surrender. The leader smirked. "That's better. Knew you'd break, same as." He never finished the sentence. Abigail's hand flicked downward, not to her holster, but to her boot. Steel flashed. A hidden knife spun through the moonlight like silver lightning and buried itself deep beneath his collarbone. He hit the ground hard. His pistol slipped from his fingers. The bride scrambled free, breath sobbing, Elias rushing to pull her into his arms. The street fell quiet except for the settling dust. Abigail stepped forward, retrieving her blade with a clean pull. The townsfolk stared as if witnessing something holy and terrifying all at once. The bride looked up at her. "Thank you," she whispered. Abigail gave a small nod. "Take care of each other. The frontier's kinder that way." She turned toward the open desert. No farewell, no explanation, just boots crunching softly into the vast, waiting night. And those who lived long enough would tell it this way, that on one moonlit night, the widow named Ash rose from dust and blood, and the desert remembered her again.